what is your perspective? What's going on? How do you all feel about ESSA? And I know we're still in the beginning stages of it. I know that the federal government has not yet approved Indiana's plan. I know where we're at, but we're still getting information about it right now. Don't all jump in at once. What do you think? What's your opinion? What do you think about it?
I think we're all very nervous about what to expect, and we're seeing pieces of it leaking into activities that we've been doing. Grant writing, for example, which is what I do, requiring a whole lot more information than has been asked for in the past because of the new accountability. And I think we're very nervous about our graduation rates, knowing exactly where all of this is going to fall down on us.
When I was talking to Peggy this morning, Peggy told me that, let's say her graduation rate is something like 96, 97%. Mm-hmm. She said that if those, about 12% of her students could get a general diploma, and that would mean her rate would drop about 12%. That's crazy.
That's correct, though.
Yeah.
And there was so the pathways, which hasn't been decided, there's going to be some, well, not a lot of hearings, but there are going some hearings coming up. And there's a study in northeastern Indiana where 20 to 30% of students that graduated would not meet these requirements. I mean, so we could look at some drastic impacts.
And in some areas, it's not bad. I think the intent of the law is good. It's trying to give fairness and equity to all students. But I think the approach sometimes leaves us a little despondent because we're the practitioners that have to make all these things happen. And when you talk about some of the changes, like if the math grades would count for if a student took an Algebra 1 test and passed it early on, it would be redundant to take it again in high school. In those types of avenues, that would be good. But if it's going to impact our overall graduation rates, that's just another sore eye for us. We're doing everything we can to improve graduation. I think we're doing a great job, and it's like every time we find the right fix, it's moved or it's changed, and I think that is so frustrating to most.
Mm-hmm. When you look at the most recent assessment for our current 11th graders, the impact that this has on them right now is absolutely overwhelming for all of us, and being able to get the remediation to take place when the state averages were as low as they were, and all of us hanging around those state averages are lower based on just the difficulty of the test and the newness of the test, and now our kids are having to face the consequences without any type of crosswalk or any type of alternative in the meantime, and ultimately it hurts our kids. So that for me right now tends to be a real big struggle. Obviously all pieces of it are, but that's a difficult one in the near, the right now immediate that we're trying to make sure that we can get a hold of, and I'm just not sure how to do it.
And not only that, we have to look at our special ed population. I didn't agree in No Child Left Behind that only 1% of that would count, and now they are rerunning that in ESSA. It's only a certain amount of students that's going to be able to take an alternative exam, and only 1% is going to be accounted for, when we know, especially in an urban setting, special ed population is growing daily because of the social and emotional needs of our children. But on the other hand, ESSA is really trying to address school safety, the climate, the cultural, all of those things that we're doing anyway. Mm-hmm. This new law, as they claim it to be, I think good educators are doing that anyway.
Sean?
my head spins, only primarily as we all face, you said it earlier, that the targets, if you're talking about assessment, graduation rate, the tools have changed, the targets have changed.
Yeah.
How many times just in the past 5 years alone?
Right.
And here again, we're looking into the darkness. We don't really know what the parameters and the bars are going to be for our results in the next 2 or 3 years, and I think the state's going to change the tests again.
Mhm.
So at the same time that we have a pending federal overhaul, we'll also have a pending state transition in the testing, which makes all of us very nervous. Our students and teachers are under constant stress to be prepared. And we all know what happened in the last 2 years, that the test scores
Right.
plummeted. That happened to everybody.
Mhm.
What does that make our state look like?
Absolutely.
And just a laughing stock, I hate
Yeah.
to use that word for your article, but sometimes I feel it's the truth.
It's just moving the field goal.
Mhm.
And then in terms of a thought out implementation, so if they would agree and get some buy-in, and as Shirley said, getting the practitioners a part of it and say, okay, if these are the standards and what we want to look at, well, have some discussion, get the schools ready, and begin it with the incoming freshman class of
Mhm.
next
Yeah.
year, and then you have I mean, that to me, it at least gives students and schools a chance to succeed. And just as a parent, I've got a freshman, and he's a pretty good student, but there needs to be a whole host of informational put out for parents, and we just aren't seeing it. And again, I think the not knowing has us all alarmed, and
I
it's
can
like,
tell
here we go
you,
again.
At the state level, we know that our superintendent's organization is working very closely with Dr. McCormick and that's one great thing that we have going, is the fact that she's been a sitting superintendent, so she feels our pain. I am pleased that they are trying to at least look at the social emotional part of the child, because that's our real world. A lot of times people don't understand, before we can ever educate a child, we have to make sure that Maslow's hierarchy of
Yes.
needs have been met. And that's the real world we live in an urban school setting. And, you know, for most schools, I'm sure there's a pocket of poverty. They have to address poverty in order to improve the whole child. And right now, I'm glad that they are. But here was the question I asked my team. So how are they going to measure that? And as I read everything, they're talking about some type of survey to
Mhm.
measure social, emotional, and cultural activities. Until they really face up, they're trying to get all these things in place at one time. They're leaving the student out. It's all political, and maybe I shouldn't get political, but other people are making decisions for us, and it's a hard pill to swallow.
You know, with the graduation rate, I kind of keep coming back to that, because if they're talking about that becomes effective in 2018, in May, how, if you have graduates who are on that general diploma track,
Yes.
how do you move them, and do you have
You
time to
can't.
move them?
Way too late.
In a year's
Game is-
time, right?
Yeah.
Over.
You can't, it
You
can't
cannot,
be
you
done.
cannot
Right.
make that transition in such a short notice.
So they'll just get a diploma that's just very basic, what?
Well, this is the unknown.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't know.
And where the concern is, and where it's important, hopefully, that when they have this hearing and get the public involved, that they'll think this thing through. I think too many times we go for a one-size-fits-all and magic solution, and what we do is, it's very complex. There are so many different components of building that go into building the student, and students come to us at very different ways. I mean, so in Indiana, we haven't even legislated the mandating of full day, of every student going through kindergarten.
And not to mention preschool.
Preschool. And there is a difference. We're an urban school too, and there's a difference from the kid that comes through whose parents have invested and can afford and pay through preschool versus the students that we see that are a lot of times just dropped off for the first day at kindergarten and are much further behind than the kids that had the opportunities for preschool.
And through this law, they again give all school districts a letter grade. That letter grade, it says that if you get an F, you're failing everybody, but then you may have a high percentage of your students passing. So that letter grade sends a false advertisement to the communities that you live in that, your school is just a failure. And so here again, regurgitating information that was in No Child Left Behind is coming again in ESSA. They don't know how, but they're talking about giving the districts a letter grade again.
I was just going to say the English learners aspect. We always had annual measurable objectives to meet, but they weren't part of that letter grade. And now they are 10% of that letter grade. And speaking for Lake Ridge specifically, our EL population is about 4%. So in other words, I was thinking of this, 4% of our students are now accounting for 10% of our grade. Ooh, that's tough for them, for their teachers, for me as the director to get everybody up to speed as to how to work best with those students.
And I would piggyback on that. Our ELL population is approximately 6%, but we're a very small school, so suddenly 5 kids can shift us over this way or that way. So and that goes with the attendance as well. When you have fewer than 90 kids per grade level, it doesn't take much to skew you one way or the other on the bell curve.
Right.